In studio from the Community Foundation is John Swann and Bob Scholefield from MVHS. And Bob, I want to. We hear a lot of, hospital downtown. It just doesn't. It doesn't advance the downtown area. Many hospitals downtown, the areas are impoverished. It doesn't do well for downtown. Now, we recently, and I can't remember which candidate who's running against Governor Cuomo, who's a Republican from Buffalo, and he's running for governor, and said just the opposite. And to be honest, said exactly what you told us maybe a year ago, and that is the hospital downtown, which is different than the hospitals that were built 30, 40 years ago. It was built to become a part of the community, has definitely advanced the downtown in the city of Buffalo. It's easy for us to use examples that haven't worked, but there's an example right down the thruway that has. The difference, though, is it's been built in modern times. Can you discuss that?
Well, we had mentioned Buffalo before, where they had old facilities that they abandoned, built and modernized the facilities downtown, including a recently opened a new pediatric hospital. And with that, they not only built a new modern infrastructure for healthcare, but the area around those facilities has grown dramatically with retail. And the two existing hospitals that were closed have now been purchased in the process of beginning to convert them into housing and retail. Yeah. It will only add to the downtown environment.
One of the big things I keep, and by the way, if you have questions, it's unfair, in my opinion, to say MVHS has not been out there and has not been available. Even it was said last night at the very time when yesterday, at the very time when you're communicating with the public, saying you haven't communicated. You're right here. You've been here several times on the air. People have the opportunity to call in, and I hope they do. If they have, no matter what the question is, you guys are here to answer that, and I commend you for that.
Bill, there's just one thing I wanted to mention about yesterday's announcement, because there hasn't been a lot of attention paid to it, but the two big items that we talked about earlier, relocation assistance and remediation relief, also, in addition to the coordinator position, which we did discuss, there is a working group of all of the project partners that has been meeting, and really the three announcements, in a sense, are the result of that coordination, along with the commitment of the MVHS board. And that group, that work group that is working on all of these big issues, has not precluded the notion of additional relocation assistance, in addition to the MVHS commitment. So when people say the money's not enough,
right,
it's not.
So, for
help.
instance, the Corrigans who say it's going to cost us a lot more than that for us to move all of what we have in our warehouse, there might be options there, is what you're saying.
The working group has been exploring a number of ways and means to see what it can do to help, because we're sensitive as a community to our fellow community residents and business people who are affected by this. This is not about engaging in a back and forth or calling each other names. This should be about finding solutions.
315-736-0186. Beds. Here's something we're hearing, and you can understand, because the hospitals as they currently stand, it's not financially feasible for MVHS. We've talked about that, right? You need to consolidate.
Absolutely. People
are saying, well, but if you consolidate, you're going to have fewer beds. I've been in the emergency room and there wasn't a bed for me, or et cetera, et cetera. How can you go with fewer beds and accommodate everyone? Talk about that, if you could.
Well, the two hospitals' operating certificates have a total of over 570 beds that are assigned to us by the State Health Department. Currently, we use on average about 300 to 325 beds a day.
Okay.
So over the years, we never reduced those off of our count. We always kept them on there in the event that we ever thought that we would grow or need more beds. But quite frankly, we've never needed to increase the number of our inpatient beds. Much of the space within the hospital where those beds used to be are now office space or outpatient services or other things like that. So moving into a new hospital with over 360 beds still puts us well over our average daily census. And it also allows us the ability to peak to the census when we are at our highest, like now during flu season. But it doesn't make sense to build 500 beds and keep 150 of them empty every day.
There will be adjustments, too, to the emergency room, right? More beds will be added to the emergency room area or rooms. Is that correct?
Not only will there be more beds, it will be laid out in a fashion that makes more sense.
Okay.
And both of our emergency rooms, even though they've been modernized over time, are still add-ons to an existing building. Building it from scratch allows us to have the services nearby that you need, elevators that get patients rapidly to the operating rooms right nearby, CAT scan across the hall as opposed to down the hall. So it will, the way it's built, it will be more efficient.
So the mayor entered into an agreement on the parking garage. Parking garage, I think that we talked to you before and we've talked to others. The project doesn't go forward without a parking garage. You have to have parking.
We need to have parking.
The mayor has agreed, and I know it took a little while, but the mayor has agreed. There are some saying, including those who have been on the Common Council and maybe in other positions in the city of Utica, saying that the mayor cannot do this. I think the number I heard is the mayor can't commit more than $15,000 without the Common Council approval. Have you been given an assurance that the mayor's signature is enough, or that the council will be approving that? Because what if the city came back and said, Common Council has to vote on it, and then they vote it down? What would that do?
Well, my understanding is that the county executive and the mayor are very much behind this project and making sure that the parking garage does get built, to have it be a joint effort, not only to support the hospital, but to support the local community, hockey games, for example, and other events. So I without being part of city government, I really have to assume that our...
well, you've been given assurances, though.
We've been given those assurances.
This is done.
That's correct.
Because it would be a terrible thing if they came back and said, "Oh, it's not done after all," because you guys moved forward based on the fact that you received
That's correct.
the go-ahead, basically, from the mayor of Utica.
And you've been a long-time observer of the scene. What's one of the number one complaints about downtown that you've heard for years and years and years and years? The lack of parking.
It's always been an issue, yeah.
Yeah. So this is a community asset that the city and county are investing in.
So the parking... I know that we caused a bit of a storm over the police station issue when we had the chief on. I apologize for that, but I'm just doing what we think is right. And the police chief did say very worried about what is being taken away, so that the police station stays there. I don't think the city of Utica has any ability at this point to build a new police station, but I think it's certainly something the city is talking about. But it is not going to happen right away. Would this parking garage alleviate the problem that the chief is worried about with parking along that area?
Well, it could. The maintenance facility is part of the plan, not the courthouse and the police station itself. But the parking garage and the parking that's adjacent to the police station should help alleviate some of that space. But with that, we have planning meetings that occur many times a week, and a couple of those meetings we've had recently involve police, fire, city planning, engineers. So in those conversations in the courthouse, talking about how do they operate those facilities during construction and then afterwards. So they're part of that planning as we move along with this project. There
was an editorial in the Observer-Dispatch, might have been yesterday. Lynn Michelini, who's a community member, has done Utica Monday nights, big with the arts. She seems to be maybe someone that's apprehensive about the hospital going downtown, and asked, why not put this up for a vote in November? Again, how do you address that? You are a private company here.
Well, right. If this were a municipal facility, I would assume there'd have to be some kind of referendum, but we're a private entity purchasing private properties and advancing our building. I don't know that it requires... I know that it doesn't require any city vote or referendums.
And more broadly speaking, remember when Utica National went downtown? In the same neighborhood, private entity, they probably displaced some existing buildings. Where was the public vote? Where was the public vote to build any of the public or private buildings, including Harbor Point development?
Sure.
I think that the hotel should go in a different location out there. I think we should vote on that.
Yeah. What questions? By the way, 315.
John doesn't really think that, by the way.
No, 315. I noticed a little sarcasm. Sometimes I wonder.
Well, the larger issue here is, and not just the letter to the editor that you referenced yesterday, but also social media, right? And we have the First Amendment, and we have an open society, and people can discuss freely and have opinions. But on social media, and to a lesser extent when you write a letter to the editor, everybody's an expert on social media. Everybody's an attorney. Everybody is an urban planner. Everybody is an architect. Everybody is a medical or healthcare professional, right? And that's something to keep in mind. So people have opinions, but I'm not sure that we want to make decisions based on social media.
So what questions, Bob, are we not asking? What do you want out that we just cannot believe they did not ask this question this morning?
You know, that question was asked of me yesterday after we did our announcement by a local reporter, and I kind of grinned and stared at her and said, well, no one ever asked us what's the benefit of having this new facility for healthcare.
Right.
That really is the big deal here. But unfortunately, we've lost track of the new hospital and the advances to healthcare in our community, and instead we're talking about property and referendums and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, and I think I've referenced that here before, the minute that we announced this new facility, the amount of interest we got from outside healthcare providers has been tremendous. We have medical schools that are looking to partner with us now to bring more medical students and residents to Utica. What does that do? That enhances the number of physicians we have working here. So therefore, patients aren't leaving Utica to go to Syracuse to have neurosurgery or pediatric care or other things. We can have those physicians here in town. We'll be able to recruit more nursing staff and more professional staff. So therefore, I don't have to make people wait an extra 15 minutes for a service because we have all of our positions filled. I think that's probably the most important thing. Your comment earlier, you said, well, we have these people mentioning they come into the ER and there's no beds. Well, half the reason that sometimes we're in the ER is because there aren't people upstairs to receive those patients. There aren't enough doctors to do those admissions, to have our staffing numbers filled to the point where we can move patients quickly through the system. That is the benefit that we'll all recognize as a result of that. Take away the financials.
Yeah. All right.
One quick point. People have asked, why is the Community Foundation involved in this? And the Community Foundation, not just here, but community foundations across the country are exercising leadership and investment in large-scale community issues of importance like this. Healthcare has long been one of our identified priorities. So has economic development. This touches on both. Our Board of Trustees has been talking for a couple of years at least about how we can support better healthcare, how we can support this project to bring us better healthcare, and how we can invest in the community. This is one of our larger goals, and we firmly believe this is the right thing to do.
Somebody's asking, how does the parking garage address the parking issue downtown? How will that work?
Well, the agreement that the hospital, county, and city has now is that it will be a 1,550 space parking garage. As a result of that garage and all the surface parking around the facility, we will have more than enough parking to accommodate what our current and future parking needs are for healthcare. And there is a number of about 400 to 500 additional spaces. So on any given day, during the daytime hour, there are 400 to 500 additional spaces for use for public use. Also keeping in mind that our prime time for use for parking is during the daytime hours, although we have employees there all night long. Portions of the parking garage will be utilized for evening events at the auditorium. So therefore, instead of parking on side streets and cutting through between buildings, you will be able to walk directly across the street and get into the parking garage.
I don't know this, but it seems logical that it would be the potential as well. If you like the Stanley to show tonight when you got snow and they're plowing, there's no place to park, but they could theoretically put up like a mini shuttle, right, for the Stanley to run people from one lot over to the Stanley, because I know parking there is difficult as well.
Right, they could. We've demonstrated on a couple of drawings a 5-minute walk from the front entrance of the new facility. That circle takes you to Genesee Street. And that 5-minute walk is defined by an average 40-year-old in good health. So, the walk isn't that far.
No, it isn't.
Another editorial, and I'm shocked that people aren't calling in with questions.
I almost
shocks
feel like
me.
That's that maybe that's a good thing, that people maybe have had their questions answered. And
we also live in a world where sometimes we don't want the answer. We've made up our mind. I'm against it. I don't care what they say. They're just going to give me an answer, and I think we live in that world today.
Or I'm for it.
I'm for it, and I don't.
They say.
Absolutely right, no doubt about it. Well, usually, those who are for are less
likely to call in,
less likely to certainly call in.
You know, we've been doing public forums and talking about this. in the most transparent way possible throughout the community. Meetings with 100 people here, 50 people here. And many of us that do those, we answer these questions time and time again. And quite frankly, the answers are always the same. So our consistent message on this project, I think, is starting to resonate with people.
Yeah. Traffic downtown. One of the editorials that was in the paper is, how will ambulances get in? If the Comets game is letting out, now an ambulance is trying to get in, and I think one of the editorials said, I spoke with someone who works for an ambulance service, and they said it will be very, very difficult. What's your take there?
Well, I got a number of takes on that one.
Okay.
Well, first of all, the secret process that I spoke of earlier, a component of that is a traffic study. So that will help answer some of those questions. Prior to all the project that we've done up to this point, we did a traffic study and worked with the Department of Transportation, acknowledging the fact that we're going to put this building here with this number of people coming in and out every day, and looked at the site placement of the building to ensure that ambulance entrants are coming off of State Street from Court and Route 12 as opposed to across Oriskany Street. But also the EMS folks, in addition to the fire department and others, are sitting at the meetings with us, having those conversations. The helicopter people are sitting with us to make sure that we're answering their questions, giving them all the information they need, so not only can they give input, they can plan for the future.
Why do ambulances come up Champlain Ave as opposed to going down the arterial?
Why do they?
Yeah, it's very interesting. That seems to be the preferred route.
He runs a hospital, not an ambulance.
Okay, I'm just wondering.
You finally stumped me. I'm sorry.
Well, that was my $500 question. Hope I had $500 here, and you have been stumped. All right, I want to thank Manaske and Mr. Swann for saying that the fact that they're not calling in must mean they're for the process. That lit up the lines. Here's Frank. Here is Frank in Rome. You're on the radio with your question, Frank. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning. I've been to Syracuse many times, to upstate, and with their garage, they charge by the hour, and it's not cheap. So could you tell us what structure you're going to charge people for using the garage, and how much you're going to charge the Comets people at night to use the garage?
All right. Have you figured out, Frank, listen on the radio to their answer. Have you figured out pricing structure at this point?
There's been no decisions whether we're going to charge or not charge. And quite frankly, if we were to charge, what that amount would be. I think it's too premature to answer that question.
But it's possible you wouldn't charge anything. It's possible.
It's possible.
Yeah. I know.
Rich in New Hartford, you're on the radio. Go ahead, Rich.
They stated before that they were going to charge for that garage. I remember hearing that said. So, but my question is, a lot of taxpayers' money is going to be used, and there's a big 7% tax raise coming to Utica, and that. And I don't understand. Shouldn't it be up for a referendum for people to vote? You know, I don't know if Bob would know that or not, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, we kind of did answer that, but I'll let you take that again, Bob, if you like.
Well, there isn't any taxpayer money going towards the building of the new hospital. The $300 million grant, although is taxpayer money, that's coming from Albany. That's not coming from the county or the city. And that $300 million was earmarked for health care. So that was either going to come to Utica, Buffalo, New York City, more than likely Brooklyn. But again, that
is a political argument. Believe me, I get it all the time. That's my money. What we don't seem to all agree on is that if that $300 million doesn't come here, it's going somewhere. Somebody else is going to get a new hospital. It's just what's going to happen. I know that's political, and people fight that. I'm sure that is an old argument that's been going on for quite some time. Oneida County Legislator Chad Davis on the line now. Chad, go ahead.
Good morning. Good morning. It's great to hear John, Swann, and Bob cover the issues. I'd make a comment and then lead into a question. One is, in addition to downtown Buffalo, Roslyn that you have talked about, you look at Syracuse, downtown Syracuse, there's 3 great hospitals there, the Veterans Hospital, Cross, and Upstate. Then you go to Boston, and they have a whole mecca of hospitals, Beth Israel, Brigham and Women's, Dana-Farber, and I'm missing a few, and they're, all bring the downtown to life. We were out in Rochester at the turn of the year here with friends, and they live in Pittsford, and they were tremendously impressed over the years the strong impacts that Strong Memorial Hospital has had for Rochester. And there's a second hospital out in Rochester, but Strong alone has about 30,000 people affiliated with it. And it's like a city of itself, and it's all helped the downtown areas. So with that said, I think I'd like to just have maybe John and Bob remind how when I heard Scott Parrott speak.
I'm up against the clock, and I wanted you to get your question. And do you mind waiting, Chad? I want to hit this on the other side